annual parish meeting then. Hoping Jill will be back with us very shortly. Sam may have to be attending to her baby, I don't know. So it's not necessary for parish councillors to attend, although we do generally do it. Obviously that makes sense if we don't, but we're not required to. So apologies. I'll open the annual parish meeting and apologies.
I don't have any.
No apologies. To confirm the minutes of the annual parish meeting, which was held 2 years ago, because as I explained earlier, the meeting last year was cancelled at every level of council by the government. We've got the minutes. Would someone like to propose? It's a bit curious, these. They have to be signed. They can't be signed tonight for obvious reasons. They have to be signed, but there's nothing in the legislation I can find anywhere that they have to be approved. They are taken as right, the chairman signs it. But, to be sensible, does anyone have any problems with the minutes? Or otherwise, would someone who was here 2 years ago and has got a memory of it, would someone like to say that they are proposed?
Proposed.
Alan thinks he was here 2 years ago. Who would second it?
I'll second it then.
Leslie, are we happy with that?
Yes.
Okay, so the minutes are approved, and that takes us on to the main business of this meeting, which is the open forum. Susan's just fallen over. Who would like to start off?
Can I start, please, Jeremy?
Yes, if you want, Martin. Yeah, please do.
Can I jump back to something you've just finished discussing, which is the complaints on social media, of which you're probably aware I was involved in. So can I ask what happens next when there's a complaint on social media?
Well, I think the other councillors may have a view on this, or other people at the meeting, but I think my thought would be that the council has a complaints procedure, as Paul raised earlier. The complaints procedure asks that complaints be put in writing to the council, and then they will be handled by the clerk and by whatever else needs to be done. Now, in a way, it's a sort of circular thing, because that defines what a complaint to the council is. A complaint to the council is handled in that way, and if it isn't put in that way, it wasn't a complaint to the council. So you may, as it were, add to the pleasure of the village, or the filling up the servers or whatever, by putting your comments on social media, but they are not complaints to the council. Not on that basis.
So does that mean they're not going to be listened to by the council?
Well, I don't know. I mean, the councillors will take whatever they want to take from what's on social media, I guess, and you'll be aware that I often do comment on what I see on Nextdoor. I'm not on any other social media, but on Nextdoor I do often comment by way of trying to explain, elucidate, clarify, correct, and so on. If councillors know what's on social media and want to bring it to the council, they can, or indeed want to answer you if that's what they wanted to do. But as I said earlier, the fact is that under the complaints procedure, a complaint is when it's made in writing to the clerk.
So does that mean you won't take any notice?
No, that's not what I said. I don't want to just keep repeating myself. I didn't say that we wouldn't take any notice. I said it wouldn't be a complaint to the council. Paul, you're on mute. Still on mute. There you are.
I beg your pardon, sorry. It might be on our website, so forgive me if I'm stating the obvious here. But the interactions with residents and the public documentation, section 9, which I quoted, but also section 10 is relevant. I think it'd be useful to put that on the website, if it's not already there, so people can see there's a very clear and prescribed way of putting forward a complaint. Now, I passionately defend the right of individuals to express their views, But yeah, and sometimes we do need to differentiate between what is a formal complaint and what's a moan, right? We will moan, and it's not meant to be, denigrating anyone who does that. I think the challenge, of course, is that elected councillors sit as councillors in council meetings, and therefore, if you look at our interaction with residents and the public, the challenge is if there is a complaint made on social media about the council as a whole, then the challenge will be how that's actually responded to on social media, because there will be people, and I've seen this in the village, who will say that's not fair because they're not on social media, they're excluded. So if a complaint is made to the council on social media and the response is just on social media, then that actually excludes a significant proportion of residents. And whilst I think as long as people observe politeness and courtesy on social media, and that sometimes, in my view, strays, then that's fine. But I think we should stick with our prescribed policy that's there in black and white. And if members of the public don't feel that the parish council's standing orders and sort of modus operandi is right, then we do have our parish council meetings in a public session where that can be brought forward. The other thing, of course, is that we get a number of comments and requests and so on that overlap. So our parish clerk is on like our caretaker, has limited hours, and in order to be most efficient, the first point of call is a parish clerk who very often can address some of these issues on an immediate basis. And if there's multiplicity of inquiries, then they can collectively pull them together. And we do have a way of then dealing with that as a sitting parish council on our once a month meeting. But I do think that our written orders should underpin this at the moment, and we shouldn't just rely on social media.
Sure. It's definitely on the website. Egon.
I'm sure it's the one that's on the notice boards as well.
Idea. Okay. And as Paul said, I mean, it's the whole thing is called interactions with residents and the public, and Section 9 that Paul quoted sets out in the event that a resident or member of the public wishes to make a specific complaint about the conduct, blah, 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 and that's where a complaint comes in, really, is Section 9. So I don't know if that gives you the answer you wanted, Martin, but it is the answer, really. The complaints are the complaints that fall into the policy that we have, and obviously, as Paul correctly put, there's always the opportunity of people to moan, which they do, and I'm not complaining that you shouldn't moan. Where I worked last, where I was also responsible for the formal quality system, among other things, we had what we called negative feedback, separate to complaints, and we defined what they were. Now, negative feedback was something that we took an interest in, but it didn't go through the whole panoply of a formal complaint, which was in writing and was about specific things and this, that and the other. Might get the board involved and all the rest of it. Negative feedback was something that was on the opposite side of positive feedback, and we counted them both. Right. Okay, I don't think there's anything else we can really say about that particular issue. Who would like to go next?
Well, I don't mind going next.
Yeah, good.
Yeah. Okay, then maybe perhaps if we just went back to what we picked up in the main parish council meeting about the decision at Poplar Farm, and no doubt, the majority of the village will share your delight in the refusal. But I think we do need to discuss the way forward as a village in terms of development and what this decision actually makes, this decision sort of Ashford Council, what it actually means to the village going forward. And as I touched on before, I think these reasons are inadequate. I do not think, as they stand, they are good enough, and I think that's something that I hope the parish council can focus on, and perhaps focus on how important the protection of the OMB is to the village, but also something that has been completely overlooked in this decision, which really infuriated me. I hope Jill's still here, because I hope she can come in a minute and sort of back this up, because she did an incredible amount of research, agreed at a late stage, but it related to the ancient woodland and the surface drainage, the suds that were put in place at both sites, the Poplar Farm one and the Stocks Road, and the impacts that they would have on that ancient woodland. Now, we're in touch with the Woodland Trust, and they were going to be getting in objections to both of the sites on this basis, but sadly they didn't come in on time for the Poplar Farm, but they can still go to the inspector. And I really think it's something that the parish council should look at, is this ancient woodland. I think there's not a lot of awareness in the village about the ancient woodland, the actual state it is in, and what we can do to protect it. Is Jill on the call?
Yeah, Jill's here again.
Jill will be able to come in, I hope, and just explain a little bit to you about the research that she's done, and maybe what the parish council could do to help. Certainly as well with the wildlife issues, because there is a local wildlife site as well as the ancient woodland. This side of the gill, anyway, is our side of the gill. Is a local wildlife site. So I might just hand over to Jill now, and she can just explain what the state the woodland is in and what further damage could be caused if they were to allow the drainage systems to actually feed into that gill.
Yeah, as Miriam said, I don't think a lot of people are aware really how fortunate we are to have that there. And when I was looking into the ancient woodland itself, and basically 2.4% of the whole of the country has got ancient woodland, and we're fortunate enough to have that here. And obviously it backs sort of hundreds of years and supports many threatened species. And it says, the Woodland Trust says, cumulative effects from housing development are not just limited to high density schemes, but are also seen in more rural, low density developments as well. So it's not the size of the development alone which is an impact, it's the cumulative effects. And obviously we've already got some here with the existing development that is so close to it, with Jubilee Fields and obviously Lloyd's Green, which was pre-OAMB, which obviously has got restrictions now, and obviously probably in more modern times wouldn't be allowed. But there is runoff going in from those developments and Woodland View going into the Gill Stream, which is a very rare thing, and the hydrology is affected by this. And obviously then you've got associated intensive farming practices which affect it as well. So to add more development is to put more water from runoff and pollutants from the roads and things into this hydrology is in real danger of undermining the habitat that is there, which is so vitally sort of important and special. And I don't think people, I mean, I didn't even realise, and I've lived here all my life, sort of what was entailed in there, and the years of sort of build-up of species of plants and lichens, and if you come along and put an attenuation basin in, which the Woodland Trust in their planning advice say should not be used to deposit runoff into gill streams. So, and I don't think many people would have known that, and yet both developers have thought that this is an absolutely fine thing to do. And even their creation of digging up the soil, they're actually going to have to go into the woodland and dig up to put in the outlets and things like that for the water, or to manage it, because we're having a ditch apparently we were going to be having here, so that would have been moving more soil, destroying more habitat outside of the woodland, and it's all linked. and I was quite shocked at sort of the sort of evidence that has managed to build up. Perhaps years ago there wasn't the knowledge, but now there is the knowledge there, and I think we really need to sort of just take a look at that knowledge. I don't know if anyone saw Country File the other week. They were on about ancient woodlands, and for instance, the anemones, which we are so fortunate that they carpet the woodlands, it can spread 6 foot in 100 years. It takes 100 years, and yet we've got carpets of that one plant. So it shows you how long they've been there. But we've got very rare plants. Just taking a quick walk through. I mean, obviously, I don't want to be treading where I shouldn't be, but just standing at the path, we've got dog's mercury and obviously native bluebells, wild garlic, saxifrage, the golden opposite-leaved saxifrage, very rare, and we've got them. We've got them all down here, all these rare plants, and that's just a handful of a cursory look. There is so much more there, and so much more that really needs to be cared for, and I don't think that the understanding of that habitat is fully known and fully appreciated, and it really needs, I think, now to come into effect with these proposals that keep coming at us, particularly with the impacts on the hydrology of the Gill Stream as well. And I don't know if you, I just read a couple of little bits, I won't go on too long. Ancient woodland is the recipient of the sum of a wide variety of effects generated by multiple developments. Ecological impacts may not immediately be apparent, but are sort of substantial over a long period of time. So they build up and build up. And so obviously there's going to be an effect from what we have already. So to add further, we're really pushing our luck, I think. So, yeah, I mean, it makes such a small part of our landscape up. So to be able to protect this, they can build in other places where it's not going to damage such a vitally important asset that we have.
Right. Alan. Alan?
Thank you, Jeremy. I think for Miriam and Jill, it might be helpful in some way to liaise with Sandhurst Parish Council. I know that they have got a lot of concerns about an application for a glamping site to the west and north of Sandhurst, which I suppose the glamping tents are sort of temporary structures or proposed temporary structures, but of course there would be permanent toilets and other facilities in the middle of ancient woodland there. And I know the parish council and a very, very vigorous and intelligent and hard-working action committee is doing a huge amount of work trying to dissuade the planners on that particular site. So I know they've accumulated a great deal of knowledge, and I was fed the same information that Jill has just kindly given us, that a wood anemone takes 200 years to colonize a piece of woodland. So, you know, it can be swept away in a moment, and 200 years of natural history goes down the drain. If they were interested, I can give them some names at Sandhurst who have a huge amount of knowledge of the history and the natural history and how they are dealing with their problem, if they're interested.
Thank you.
Thank you, that'd be good. Thank you.
Can I just...
I will try and forward that.
On one thing. I take it ancient woodland is a designation rather than...
It is, yeah. It's mapped on the DEFRA, if you go on DEFRA Magic Maps, it's both of those woodlands and the woodlands behind are all logged as priority habitats.
And does that actually mean, in this instance, ancient woodland, or is that a kind of...
No, ancient woodland priority habitat.
Special woodland?
Yeah, with the Gill, and having the Gill Stream is another rarity as well in itself. So, really got quite a special thing there.
That was the second question that I had. We all know about how there's a problem for trees if they run out of water. And you're saying, in effect, that there could be a problem, putting pollution on one side for the moment, you're saying that even just discharging more water could be a problem?
Yeah, there's already problems now because it's so poorly maintained. A lot of the trees have slid down the banks and caused landslides, and they've fallen across the gill stream and blocking it. So in the winter, when we have such severe and sudden downpours, the water that's trying to torrent down there now is obviously not flowing in the way it should be anymore, and it's coming up against almost like dams, and which is affecting the banks because it's obviously building up far higher than it should be, and in some places it's washed away the actual original formation of how it should be, and it's more like a flat plain in some places. So yeah, unfortunately, because of the poor management of it anyway, it's in a dodgy state, especially on this northern bank on this side, because it's so steep and you've already got runoff coming from the fields and everything else at such force, as well as you've got runoff coming from the homes as well, and naturally what's being fed in. So it's already in a bit of a state.
That was also what I was going to question. The amount of runoff won't change because it's the amount of rainfall per 1,000 metres or whatever. What happens when you build houses is you concentrate some of the places where it goes. The potable water that comes in from Southeast Water, of course, has to go out in the sewage, not in the surface water.
Yeah.
So I can see that there will still be an impact. I mean, as you've correctly pointed out, Jill, they will have to disturb the wood to actually provide a water course into the gill stream. And they will also possibly be concentrating the periods, or concentrating the immediate areas. So, of course, some of it may also not soak into the soil as much as it used to do, although the hydrology need.
Because if you look at the land that surrounds, like especially the Stocks Road end, the ground is very, very compacted through modern farming methods. It's rock hard. So quite frankly, most of the time it just feeds down, actually follows the footpath route. The rain just torrents down there and into the, it's because it doesn't, like you say, it doesn't soak in so well.
That's what I'm trying to examine really, is the fact that there's a problem already with bad management. There's a problem already with the rain running off the field. Because it floats that way. What's going to happen with the building is it will disturb the arrangements, but it won't actually create the arrangements. But I still recognise what you say, that it could be a negative impact. But
it's the cumulative effect as well, because you'll get more people, because they were talking about formally adopting the footpath through from the other field and following it along and creating a footpath, but then you won't just get local residents using that area. Like at the moment, there's a few local residents who walk the area. You'll have major, like, tourists and walkers from all over the country coming to walk and so the woodland is in very severe sort of trouble, possibly, if we get development of being disturbed by human impact, by more litter, by walking, more dogs, because it will be increased to such a degree. So it's a sort of cumulative thing. It's not just one thing that will impact it. It's the cumulative effect of development, of the creation of it, and also the resultant effects from it.
Okay. All right, thanks for all of that, Jill. I think if we leave the ancient woodland there on that, and Miriam's point, of course, more generally is the issue of the reasons that Ashford put forward, and the fact that they may have some strengthening available, such as the ancient woodland, which has not yet been argued by Ashford. So I'll take those points you've made. Who would like to go on from there?
Jeremy, can I just ask Julie a quick question? Putting the housing building to one side for a moment, you're saying there's a problem already. Is there a management plan in place? I don't know. Does the same person own all of the land that's affected, or is it more than one person? I mean, what's happening at the moment, if anything? I just don't know anything about it. It's all news to me, so I declare the fact that I don't know anything about it. But I don't.
No, I don't. Not a lot of people will do, unless you actually take the time to really try and find things like land registry information, which I did. Okay. From what I can see, the owner of the field at Poplar Farm that was going to be is the owner of the woodland on this side of the stream that follows both fields along, so even into Piper's Field.
And is a management plan in place at all?
No, no. Mr. Piper has had previous plan. He has got a management plan on some of the encompassing some of the trees, which is almost run out. I think it's got a year to go. But the thing is, it's down to the landowner, and if the landowner doesn't sort of go and look for help or look for it, it doesn't sort of come and find them. So this is a lot of the problem. You know, we know it's there, but if the landowner's not going to sort of want to sort of flag it up and do anything about it, then yeah, this is why we end up with woods that aren't as good as they should be.
Yeah, just going back to Paul's point there, what actually exists at the moment is a sewer adopted by Southern Water, and it comes from the Woodland View and obviously get Jubilee Fields and Portuguese, but Jubilee Fields and the Woodland View development go into it. It comes down along on Piper's land, I would say, but very close to the boundary with the Tomsit's land. It comes down there, and then there's an inspection chamber at the bottom by the gill. And then if you look at the gill, you can see there's 3 sort of like concrete outlets where the water is cascading down there. Now, that was all built, obviously, at the time of the developments, which was long before these sustainable urban drainage systems came in, the SUDs. So Southern Water must do some maintenance work to that pipework, I'm sure. But when it goes into the gill, obviously that is the Tomsit's land. So what their responsibilities are, I have really no idea. But I think that's something we could probably find out from Southern Water, where the responsibility lies for that. But what the Piper's site is proposing is that they will join in with that pipework with an attenuation basin right on the edge of the ancient woodland. So in other words, they're going to collect the water there, and then they're going to feed it in with some kind of valve which controls how it will go, the amount that goes in. So they collect it in heavy rain and then gradually over the period of time feeding it in. But what they're feeding it into is what seems like a completely uncontrolled system, that the water just comes in and goes straight out, as far as I'm to understand. Now, I've never been able to observe it at the times of heavy rain, because then you would see. But looking at the banks, it seems like it must be an absolute torrent that comes out.
Can you hear it? You can hear it from like Jubilee. The roar. Yeah.
Okay. So I'll take your word on that, Jill. So that is the concern. And the other concern is that both of the experts for both sites, when they put in their drainage strategies, not one of them has recognised that the water is feeding into ancient woodland for number 1, in an AOMB for number 2, and that it's a deeply incised gill stream, which is a unique feature of AOMBs, and being there for hundreds and hundreds of years, and with the biodiversity which Jill has so ably described to us all that is in there. So that's really where we're looking for the parish council support. I mean, it's the first time I've really observed it. I've been over the footbridge a number of times on that public footpath, but I never really observed the actual woodland. Now, there's a lot of tracks through that woodland. There's a lot of people that obviously use it, and it's not public footpaths, but over centuries, I think, villagers must have gone through that woodland, because these are really well-trodden paths. So really what we're looking for, and I think, Alan, thank you for pointing out Sandhurst, and certainly we'll get in touch and see if they can give us any information to help us. But I think what we're looking at is that the parish council look into this as well, because, I mean, we need you to be like Sandhurst, really, and stand up for the protection of the ancient woodland and make sure that we don't do anything to deteriorate it further.
just before coming to you, Alan, can I just clarify then what you've been saying, Miriam? That Jubilee Field and Woodland View East are running their surface water off across
Can you just put it in the bottom up? Is that possible? Well, we're with you quite soon.
going off proximate to the Stocks Road line, although Stocks Road, as you said, has got the attenuation tank, and is actually discharging their surface water already into the gill.
Definitely.
And that's where you've got these big pipes that come out.
Yeah.
I don't think there's any control mechanism in there.
I don't think so. There's no attenuation basin. I don't know if there's an underground tank somewhere, but the evidence is it's not.
Entirely possible.
Yeah.
All right, that's very interesting. Thank you, Alan.
Thank you, Jeremy. Miriam, Jill, thank you. The friend of mine in Sandhurst who is really very active in this is called Janet Dinwiddie, and I'm just emailing her now to ask if she would be happy to liaise with you on this matter, because she does have a huge amount of knowledge, and I think she could be of great value to you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you
I'll get back to you as soon as I can.
Thank you
very much.
I think you've got your hand up. Oh, Colin's gone. Colin did warn me earlier that he may have to break off to take an important phone call or contact. So I saw him with his hand up. That may be why he's now disappeared, because he also disappeared 5 minutes earlier. But he did warn me that it wasn't rudeness. He definitely has to disappear to get an important issue. So, okay, that's helpful, Alan. Who else would like to raise something for us? Have we exhausted you? Certainly, if you'd asked me what I thought was going to come up today, it wasn't going to be a woodland, so I think you've given me something else to think about. No, ancient woodland is very important in some.
Jeremy,
Yes,
sorry,
John.
can I make a suggestion? Given all the research that Gillian's done, it would be useful to, I don't know how you do this, but to sort of capture it and you know, the challenge for anyone on the parish council, I think, is that none of us are hydrology experts or. Well, no, but the fact that but the fact is that, you know, my knowledge about attenuation tanks would probably take about 5 seconds to share. But the fact is that I'm mindful that this is an area where ultimately, inevitably, expertise is going to be needed. But I think that what you've done is A, to be applauded, but B, if we can find some way of capturing it so that we can sort of understand it. Well, yeah, but it needs to be circulated. So my suggestion,
I can do that,
is that goes to our parish clerk for circulation, and at least we can have a chance then to properly digest it, try and understand it, you know. And I think our track record is pretty good when we get stuff like this. We work out what questions we can ask in terms of improving our understanding, because ultimately we're never going to be experts in this. But our commitment as volunteers in the village, as a parish council, is to try and understand, to try and get a balanced view, and to try and, you know, pull that information. It would be a shame to waste it. In the same way Alan is saying, hey, there's a local nearby parish that's got information, let's see what we can get from there. It's gathering it all together so we can make an informed decision. And ultimately, you know, whatever decision is made, you know, there are always pros and cons, but the more we can get an understanding, and you know, my view is that in some respects the attenuation tank and the management of this area is as important whether there's housing or not. I mean, you know, if we don't build anything, the situation is going to still deteriorate. And now we know about that. I mean, I think I know the area in the sense that I know the gill from the Kingsgate end.
Yeah, that's up. Yeah.
And I know that very well. And yes, different parts of the times of year, there is change and trees fall. I mean, a lot of trees fell down in the winter, right? And they haven't been cleared. And with the anemones out at the moment, and now the bluebells, there's an attraction about it in some respects, but actually, you know, maybe we should be pushing for better management. So if you could share that with us, we could have a better understanding. Considered attention.
I did this. This was a comment that went into the council didn't quite make the deadline for the decision, but I'll obviously be submitting it if it goes to appeal. And what I can do is I can send that along to Yvonne by PDF, and then you can sit and read at your leisure. It's like you say, I'm no expert, but it's just sort of snippet information from the Woodland Trust and other things which are obviously relevant to the developments specifically and the attenuation basis. Like you say, no idea what the things were until had to look into it, and then was quite shocked at what would the implications for the land everywhere else in their making, let alone in what they're actually going to end up doing. So yeah, I'll PDF that to Yvonne, and then you can take a look at that.
Thank you.
Okay.
No problem.
One thought has occurred to me before we move off of this, and this is just thinking of the experience of where I am in the Meadows, because we have a system that's not completely dissimilar to this, although I didn't think of it when you first started, Jill. Surface water from the meadows, the road, gully drains and the rooftops and gutters all drains into a collection system that was put in by Berkeley Homes 21 years ago. It discharges to a stream along the side of Sue's Field, and we have an attenuation pond rather than tank in the field on the footpath that goes past the meadows. Now, the interesting thing is this, that we only found out about when Southern Water were out looking at it in the last spring. The system is a 10-inch diameter pipe that runs all the way from collecting the drains and the gutters and everything together, past the attenuation pond with any extra water going into the pond or out, and then goes all the way down the field to the stream. There is a restriction placed by the Environment Agency on the discharge into the stream. And instead of the 10-inch pipe, there's a 4-inch diameter choke just by the pond, just past the attenuation pond. So it can, although it's got a 10-inch pipe, which means it's not so likely to get blocked up, it's got a 4-inch choke for a short length, which means it can only discharge at the rate of a 4-inch pipe. Now, if you think of that, that's only about 16% of what a 10-inch pipe would do. And that's placed on them by the Environment Agency, and that's 20 years ago. So, whatever they do now isn't going to be any more easygoing, especially when we're not discharging into ancient woodland. The thing is that before the houses and the road was built, the water all went down the field. It's on a slope. It all went down as best it could. And it doesn't soak in very well. So some of it now is being attenuated through quite a big attenuation pond and going into the stream rather than the gill, call it a gill if you want, at actually a controlled rate, where previously it might have been worse. Now, I'm not actually saying that this would be a better solution to what happens at the minute, but it may be that the hydrology engineer that they have involved at Stocks Road, just think of Stocks Road because it hasn't been, turned down yet. They would have looked at that. I did see in the documents that went in, there was stuff about the Wadhurst clay and exactly what the permeability of the clay was judged at. And that was what gave them their first sort of baseline of how much water ran off. So it might be, I'm not saying it is, I'm not capable of saying it is, but it might be that actually, although it would be nice if nothing happened to this gill at all, it could actually be beneficial. It's feasible. I don't know whether it's likely.
No, I think in the right, they're really good in the right place. Like whatever, they're really good. But there are certain locations they're not appropriate, and this is one of the. Well, this is two of them. Popular with the ancient woodland running along there is not. So, but I'll send you this anyway. And Woodland Trust did a lot of stuff about it as well, so to read up on. So you can have an idea of what I've said, and then you can look up for yourselves what if you want to delve a little deeper.
Just to say, I don't know, obviously we're talking about a wildlife site as well. I think I heard that perhaps the Parish Council are able to get pre-advice from the Kent Wildlife Trust, that maybe that's something that you could ask them to look at the impact on the wildlife, if that were possible. I think we're going to need all the help we can get. We've engaged with the Woodland Trust, I mean, I am a life member of the Kent Wildlife Trust, and I could approach them, but it might come better from the parish council if you were to approach them. I think it's pretty, you know, well, I mean, it's obviously a wildlife site, so there must be protected species in there, and I mean, there's lots that we're aware of ourselves, but there might be others. So that would be really helpful if you could do that.
And that wildlife site, that is a formal designation as well,
Yeah.
at a local level.
Yeah.
Is that biodiversity something or other, or is it a whatever?
Well, I mean, it's obviously just been designated because of the species that are in there. I mean, I don't know the exact details, but I mean, certainly there's badgers and bats everywhere in the vicinity, and I'm sure a lot more. I'm definitely not an expert on wildlife, and it would be really good if we could get the Kent Wildlife Trust engaged with protecting the area.
All right. Another point. Well, that's very good. Does anyone else on any of the councillors want to raise anything while we've got the benefit of our few residents here? No?
Just while we're talking about Southern Water, that was a major concern. I think the state of the sewers in Wittersham that came up when the new developments were being discussed. Is that still something that's considered to be a problem, or have Southern Water done anything or are doing anything about the problem? Do you know, Miriam?
Yeah, well, I can tell you what Southern Water said. What they've said is that the current system can't take it, and that they will have to make the improvements, but they can't guarantee that they can do those improvements for at least 2 years. So they've said that the houses would not be able to be occupied until they've actually done the necessary improvements. And that's where we are really, that the current system definitely cannot take it, and that they will have to do it because they have an obligation to do it if it's given permission, but they couldn't do it at least for another 2 years.
Sorry, is that the improvements would have to be made if the new houses were built, or improvements need to be made anyway to the current system for current housing?
Right. Okay. It's the obligation just goes with the development. You can't make a developer pay for something that doesn't relate to their development. So the developer's responsibility is to pay for the improvements, and Southern Water's responsibility is to provide them. But the other issues for the village are not going to be solved by that. You know, I think it's something that really needs taking up with Southern Water, because, I mean, the Stocks Road is at the end of the system. We used to be the last house on the system. We're on main drainage, but then Mount Pleasant was put on. I guess you're not on the main drainage.
No, I'm not.
So it just ends at our house. So you can imagine it's all going that way. It's going through Forge Meads and that way. So all they're going to do is provide the sewers necessary to cope with that development, but anything that happens downstream, it's, you know, it's a good point you raise.
There's no intention. Sorry.
Yeah, as I say, I can't say what the intention is for the rest of the village, but the developer couldn't be made responsible for that. If you see what I'm saying, it's got to be. Yeah. That wouldn't be deemed reasonable to expect him to affect the village. You know,
I was concerned equally with the current problem in the village as was voiced.
Yeah.
And is that still ongoing? And does Southern Water need to be actually taken to task about that, because they do have an obligation?
Oh, absolutely, yeah. I mean, we had this. I mean, Yvonne will tell you, we had someone very senior from Southern Water back in Wittersham years ago. You know, who said the system was absolutely hopeless. I mean, Jeremy said we've had some improvements, but we haven't seen the benefit of them. People have still got, in times of heavy rain, because a lot of the surface water actually does go into the foul water system. Now you're not allowed to do that, as Jeremy said. That's an absolute no-no. You've got to have two separate systems. But historically, a lot of it just all went into one. And that's the problems we've got in Wittersham. The surface water, in times of heavy rain, gets into the sewage system and it backs up and comes up through the drains in the road.
Right.
That is our problem.
Apart from the improvements, which I talked about earlier at one of the other meetings, the public meetings, the other thing that turned up was that there was a constriction in the foul system down Swan Street, just near the double bend before Archer's Post, I think it is, where trying to think of his name, where Miles lives, Miles Wyborn. There was a problem there where not only did the sewer go down Swan Street from the Swan all the way down to this place, but it then did an abrupt 90-degree turn. And it was made for a blockage, it seemed to me. But it then turned out, I can't remember when I heard this, but in fact there was a length of narrower pipe, which was the last thing they wanted, because of course all that was doing was lining up the blocking, which is when it then used to overflow and run across his farmyard or whatever it is. Now, Southern Water were there. A month or two ago, a few weeks ago, Southern Water were there digging up the field, and so far as we could judge without being certain, they were actually going to be, I mean, they said it when Miles was talking to them some months ago, that they were going to do it in a couple of months, and that seemed to figure that they have actually taken or done something about that problem. That's not maybe the whole answer, because I still wouldn't be very happy with an abrupt right turn. That's still going to be potentially a blockage, but at least if they've taken out the narrow pipe, that helps. Now, that may or may not matter to Stocks Road. I think I understood from the application that the Stocks Road site aims to send their foul water across the Jubilee Field, and Jubilee Field then goes across, according to Jill, to the end of Lloyd's Green. And if that is true, what comes from Lloyd's Green certainly goes down Swan Street. It does not go down the street, which you'd think it would. Because Jubilee Field, of course, is already west of the street. So it's a sort of long way round. But that's some supposition, but it seems to fit. Okay, does anyone have anything else they'd like to be saying? Otherwise, I will thank you very much for coming, the visitors, as it were. We'll close the annual parish meeting. As I've said several times already, it is the council's hope and aim to have a proper meeting in the village hall where we will put on the refreshments, and we will ask Mike if he gets re-elected, and Mick to come along and give their reports, and I will give a report on the parish council, although it'll be much shorter than usual for the last year. And then particularly to try and look forward. I mean, we look back all right, but we've got to see how the village is going to start doing the things that it used to do until they were all brought to a crashing halt 15 months ago, and encourage people to think back into the sort of things they used to like doing. Get it all going again. Otherwise, we could find that we lose things that we cherished simply because they've not been used for 15 months. Okay, thank you very much for coming, and I'll close the annual parish meeting. If the three residents can say thank you and goodbye, and then I'll reopen the parish council meeting straight away so that we can do our closed session.